Cheers, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Riffin with HB. We do this on Saturdays where we talk about a band from the past or a band that needs to be brought to light that's underrated. Today, we're talking about the Cars. Last week, we spoke about Creedence Clearwater Revival. After we do this on Saturdays, we go over to Discord and we jam out on guitar. So I'll bring this up again at the end of the show. So, pull up my notes here. Give you guys just a second to get in here. Cheers. Thank you guys for joining. All right, the Cars formed in 1976. The band members Rick Ozek on rhythm, lead vocals, and backing vocals as well. He's primary songwriter of the band. Benjamin Orr, bass guitar, and lead and backing vocals. He actually wrote some of the songs for the band, sung some of the songs. We got Greg Hawkes on the keyboard and the synthesizer, backing vocals as well. David Robinson on the drum. He's previously in the band the Modern Lovers and DMZ as well. The name origin, the name of the band comes from Captain Swing, and that was their original name of the band, and they said that it sounded too much like a car brand, so they changed it to the name of the Cars, and it really had no meaning other than that. Just kind of sounded cool. It was simple, easy to remember. The style is new wave, power pop, punk, glam rock, garage rock, synth pop. Kind of an 80s sound to their band for sure. We were in the 70s, and now we kind of transitioned into the late 70s, early 80s here. The albums from 1978, from 2011, they had 7 albums. The albums are The Cars, the self-titled album, 1978, Candy O in 79, Panorama in 1980, Shake It Up in 81. So they were coming out with albums every year. A lot of these old school bands, you'll notice compared to the bands now, they kind of take a little bit of time in between writing their songs. They were just pumping them out left and right. So Shake It Up in 81, Heartbeat in 1984, Heartbeat City in 1984, Door to Door in 1987, Move Like This in 2011. The formation of the band, Rick and Ben had collaborated in earlier bands together, so then they decided to get together and form the band The Cars. They had actually grew up together, like in the scene of music and stuff like that. So that's why they have a very similar sound. Like if you can't really tell the difference of the voice, and a lot of people claim that they can, but the way I always try to explain it to people is, if a kid can't tell the difference, then you're fooling them pretty good. And as a kid, I could never tell the difference, and I might have interpreted it as a one was younger or older, like younger or older version of themselves, but still a very similar sounding voice to both of those guys. They were what made the Cars really good. In particular, is they were a very technical band, and that's why a lot of the songs are very pop melodic. They get stuck in your head. The guitar riffs, it's very layered, and their music is very unique. Has a very unique sounding. That's why I equate to the language of music. That music speaks to us, and you don't really know why a song gets stuck in your head, but you're like, yeah, that's a good song. It's a good band, and the Cars do that a lot too. That's the reason why we're talking about them today. Yeah, I had a mushroom trip on New Year's, so me and my friend were talking about it. He said, "Let the good times roll." I was like, "Wow, that's a great song," and instantly clicked in my head. I'm like, "Yeah, that's who I'm going to bring up is the band The Cars." Great song, great band. They have tons of songs like that. Let's get into it a little bit here. You might think actually won the first MTV music video of the year. I thought that was pretty cool. 1978, Van Halen, Devo, Dire Straits, The Police, and Squeeze all came out with their first albums. 1978 was a great year for music. I mean, the 70s and 80s, definitely a great year for music. A lot of the bands we talk about are going to be formed during this time period. 13 singles on the top 40 of the Billboard Charts 100, and 4 of them making it to the top 10, actually. Heartbeat City in 1984 generated 5 top 40 singles alone. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2018. Actually, let's pull up some pictures of these guys for you. So these are the singers of the band. Okay, this is Rick and Ben in that order. These are the lead singers right here. You know, a lot of people try to decide like who's the face of the band, but they had a very similar voice. They worked together really well, created some of the world's best music. It's really like collaboration together of music. I always speak about this, talk about this a lot. Show you another picture here. Yeah, whenever you try to get a band together, it's hard enough to get 4 or 5 people to get together and just, work together in peace and get along great, but much less to be able to do it and do the music that they do, like to play their instrument. It's like collaborate their part to the band and essentially stay in their lane. Yeah, 100%. It's really hard to do to get a band to work like clockwork, and very few bands make it their whole lives playing together. It's very rare. This band was no exception. They played for a while till 2011, and he actually died of cancer, Ozak. So, or sorry, yeah, Okasek. Rick is his name. So yeah, I haven't known much about this band. This is why I kind of wanted to dive into this. Everybody knows the songs of the band, but I definitely learned a lot about the band, and I learned about a lot of songs that I've never really heard before that were really good. The collaboration, again, to be a technical band and to understand like the dynamics of music and how it really, the intricacies of it, to really what makes a song great, the timing of a song, the intro of a song, the way the song tells a story. I'm going to mention this several times throughout this podcast. That's like music comes up like a story. A good story has an intro, and then it rises, and then it gets to a climax, and then it comes back down. And it's like music, a good song does that to you, takes you somewhere, brings you in, lifts you up, and sets you down nice and easy. This band does this with a lot of their songs. It makes sense why their song you might think when the first MTV Music Video of the Year. It's not necessarily because of the vibe as much as it is the song, the sound, the feel. It wasn't what they were seeing on the screen, but that just helps bring it to life for sure. Seeing a band live is really the good way to encompass like what you're actually getting into. If you guys got any questions or anything along the way, actually, comments, whatever. Cheers, cheers. Cheers, cheers. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I want to go ahead and just make a quick comment. We're going to be doing Leonard Skinner for next video. That'll be next week's video. Be excited to cover them. They were actually one of the first bands that I ever really went and saw. We went to a couple local pub events with some local rap artists and stuff, but the first real band that I saw them at the State Fair. I'll have to check on the year. I'll have to think back on the year for you, but I was maybe 16 or 17 years old. So it was about 10 years ago. So yeah, somewhere roughly in there. That'll be the next band we're covering here. This is 7 albums right here from 78 to 2011. They kind of slowed down obviously towards the end, but from 78 to 81, they had an album every single year, 78, 79, 80, 81. The Cars in 78, Candy O in 79, Panorama in 80, and Shake It Up in 81. And 13 singles on the top 40 of the Billboard Charts 100, and 4 of them making it to the top 10. With one of their albums, Heartbeat City, in 1984, generated 5 top 10 or top 40 singles alone. Yep, they were finally inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2018. Such a different vibe, such an 80s vibe, nice vibe. I started listening to their music, and then I kind of opened my perspective up, and I started to think about how they were like bands like Midnight Oil and U2, and they very much sound very similar to those kind of guys. Very nice synth vibe as well. Synthesizers were becoming big, being used in music, and then they still are today. They honestly, a lot of times you have to have like a trained ear to hear because the synths are being run through distortion or whatever. Try to make it sound different, but yeah, I love that sound. It's very unique, very original. I wish I could have seen the original lineup, but yeah, see, that's why I always tell people it's like it's not Leonard Skinner, but it was great, dude. I can't lie to you, it was really cool to see like they're still doing it. They're still kicking ass. And like I mentioned in the last show, or I'm pretty sure at least I mentioned, if I haven't mentioned, we don't do like the gossip and the drama of the bands, but I definitely would like to speak a little bit about the story of his death, because it's so crazy. The plane crash with him and his brother, and him being found on that field by that guy and being shot by him. It's a very crazy story. I know we're talking about the cars here. I'm kind of going off track, but yeah, he always told his parents that he would never live past 30. It's a very like unique story about why like he thought that and then how he ended up dying. It's very unique. Yeah, very cool. 70s, late 70s and 80s, it carries its own vibe. You can hear it in the music, and you could really distinguish it from any other genre and any other time period for that matter. And these guys weren't really inventing these kind of musics like synthwave and new wave and stuff. These are musics that had already been invented, really, but they were kind of reinventing it for themselves and making it to where it was more palatable for the masses and doing it without being fake. They were doing it genuinely the way they wanted it to be, and it just turned out that people loved it and turned out great. Cheers, everyone. While you're here, drop some people in the some bands in the comments you want to see. A lot of these bands I named. I mean, think about it, in 1978. I mean, some of you guys were probably here live in 1978, and if you were, my age, 1978, that's even better because bands like Van Halen, Devo, Dire Straits, The Police, they were all coming out in the same year with their first album, and some great bands that were all going to end up covering every single one of those bands, by the way. Candy O, yep, exactly. We've talked about that, Pops. That's 1979, and that's what I was mentioning. From 78 to 81, they were coming out with an album every single year. Back then, those bands were drive and determination. Their life was music. They were getting up in the morning and clocking in, and their lab or their studio or whatever, and just playing and jamming out, really trying to perfect the arts. Cheers, everyone. I hope you guys are having a good day. Thank you guys for being here. Yeah, you might think when the first MTV music video of the year. I mean, that's when MTV was coming out and music was starting to be able to like press to the masses. And again, being able to see a band live really changes your perception of what you're actually seeing in a band, like the style, the swagger, the clothes they had on, the way that the people moved on stage. I mean, people say this about the guitarist from ACDC all the time because he's like down low playing like this. It's just like such a really funky style. Like people love that. One of my favorite guitarists is from Pink Floyd because it's just a way different, like way more relaxed, kind of smooth feel. It's totally different vibe. We're gonna talk about all these bands too, by the way. Pink Floyd and all these old school bands because something that again, all you guys maybe know about them, but if you ask anybody under 30, they're not really familiar with these bands. They're really learning about it because this is a prime example. I knew a lot about the Cars and their songs, but I never knew as much as I really started to dive into it. That's what I love about doing this podcast now. Is like it's opened my mind up because as a kid, music wasn't chronological to me. It was all just coming out the next day. I didn't know this was old school music. So when people say, "Hey, you listen to old school music," to me, it was really just music. But now I've like opened my mind and started being able to look at these bands and figure out what they were and what their music actually was, finding new stuff out about them, and it's totally changed my perception about looking at music. Cheers, Marmar. What's up, buddy? Cheers, guys. Thank you guys for being here. Yeah, so next week we're going to be talking about Leonard Skinner. That's why I was mentioning a little bit about them because their music was changing the world, and very much like Creedence we talked about last week. Leonard could get on stage and just jam a 3-minute song for 15, 20 minutes on end. And then those guys were good at what they did. They spoke to each other with music. They didn't even have to use words. They knew when to switch up the music by when the drummer was changing up his beat, or so many different things like that. These guys were great. They were great friends, and then they got together and did their musical thing, and that's very rare in the musical industry. There's very few bands that actually make it past their 5-10 year hiatus, just like the Cars here, because unfortunately, even Creedence didn't even make it to 5 years. Really, in their hiatus was only about 3 years because they didn't get along, and that's just the way it works, man. Can't get along with everyone, and trying to get along is hard enough, much less to be able to do your thing and do your part and bring it to the table without letting your ego get involved. We talk about the 4 agreements a lot. If you ruin your 4 agreements, it's gonna be hard to be a band. And a lot of these bands, love them or hate them for what they do. Part of what they do is they're rock stars. So there's a lot of money and fame and drugs and girls and alcohol and everything you think of, like that goes into this lifestyle for a lot of these bands, and ends up being the thing that kind of seals the deal. Hey, cheers, guys. Thank you guys for being here. Drop in the chat what some bands that you guys would like to see. Dire Straits. Yeah, I got to do Dire Straits for sure, man. Yep. Cheers, everyone. Dire Straits will be something I'm covering. We got 52 weeks in a year, so ideally there'll be a Saturday every week, and we'll be doing at least 52 bands a year. So we'll be covering a lot of different bands, some modern day bands too that I like. There's two bands in particular that I really want to cover. I've mentioned this in the last podcast. This band called Little Stranger. They're kind of like a hip hop, reggae, R&B thing. Really cool. That's a duo. They're really cool. Check out their music. It's called Little Stranger. Start off with coffee and a joint, and then walk your way down, the rabbit hole. And then another band. He's a hip hop artist. His name is Prof, and that's another really good band that we're going to end up talking about. See, these aren't old school bands; they're kind of modern day bands, but kind of underrated, and it's bands that I like, and I think that people need to hear about them because when you listen to their music, a lot of people like and relate to it. We just need to get the word out there, and that's what I'm trying to do: spread the word. It's always important. I say this a lot. It's important what you do whenever you get the microphone, what you do with it. If you speak about yourself, that's egotistical. So whenever I get the microphone, I like to spread the word about these bands and talk about things that I like because we need to hear about it. It'll kind of open your eye up to life around you when you realize that this music shaped the culture that we're in right now. And it was because of the style and because of the drugs and because of everything going on in that culture that made who we are right now. 100%. It needs to be brought to light. We need to talk about this more. I'm trying to keep these about 20 minutes or so we'll wrap this up here in just a couple minutes. I appreciate you guys being here, but yeah, I want you guys to make sure to join us over on Discord right here after the show, and we'll be playing guitar. You guys come bring your instruments, whatever you do, your voice or whatever, and we'll start playing music together. It'll really try to get us to level up who we are as a musician and kind of expand our minds. That's what we're trying to do. Cheers, man. Cheers, guys. See some comments here. Little Stranger's awesome. Boston band, yes, sir. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Pops. I'm sorry, I forgot to even say that. That's where they're from. Actually, is from Boston, Massachusetts. So yeah, very everything made sense to me. I was like, yeah, they're from Boston, so that they definitely have that Boston sound, that Boston vibe. During that time period in the 60s and 70s, it was a melting pot of culture. It still is, really, but for sure during that time period, it was becoming America, becoming what it was. Cheers, guys. Thank everyone for being here. Cheers. So yeah, next Saturday we'll end up doing Leonard Skinner. You guys are great. Appreciate all the support. We will actually be going back live for Mystics on Monday at 9 p.m. EST, and Derek Scott Bible Studies on Tuesdays. If you guys want to check that out, please go support him. It's great stuff that he's doing over there for Christian community. So you guys, please go follow him and support. Next weekend we'll be checking out Leonard Skinner. Thank you guys so much for being here. Drop in the comments of the video what bands you want to see. I'll start writing these things down, and we'll get them all taken care of as we go along. There's so many bands to cover, but we got so much time. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Join us over on Discord right now for on the Mystics Discord for Jam Sesh. Bye, guys. You'll have a good night or good afternoon, rather.